today. The suspect allegedly shot and wounded Tibbets on the 2nd of August last year. The toddler was placed on life support but died in hospital on the 8th of August. 8 affiliates of the Congress of South Africa's trade unions have pledged not to participate in the Federation's meetings until Metal Workers Union NUMSA is reinstated. The union was expelled from COSATU in November for contravening COSATU's constitution. The expulsion was based on resolutions taken at NUMSA's special Congress in 2013, including the decision not to support the ANC in the general elections last year.
If COSATU will accept Lemosa, well, our attitude is very simple. We think that Stumo Dlamini will do everything to make sure that Lemosa is accepted.
Remember, you can find all of those stories on Facebook. Just look for Newsroom. And you can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom for all the latest news. Kevin, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine. The top story, Lesotho's Prime Minister Tom Thabane has retained an early lead in the general elections there, winning 35 out of 80 constituencies where vote counting has now been completed. The election is aimed at restoring stability following an alleged coup attempt there last year. 24 parties are vying for support amongst the 1.2 million registered voters.
Relations between the two institutions have been frosty since an attempted coup. The security establishments have been at each other's throats for months. But thanks to SADC's intervention, they are attempting to settle their differences.
I must admit, we really need each other. And we are working towards that. And very soon, we are going to sit down and make formal arrangements as to how we are going forward from now.
Lesotho police have thanked the Basotho for giving peace a chance, a sentiment echoed by SADC.
In all the voting stations that we have been as the Troika, based here in Maseru, at the leadership of the Troika, we observed a very peaceful and calm and cooperative process.
The Basotho cast their ballots at more than 1,500 voting centers. Crowds have already gathered at the National Results Center to get the vote result firsthand.
The election results will be broadcast nationally and will also be uploaded onto the IEC website.
The IEC expects the official results to be announced on Thursday. It looks like the country is again headed for a coalition government. Jostling has already started behind the scenes, but a picture of who will lead that government will be clear soon. Yolisa Njamela, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Now, for the latest from the Mountain Kingdom, we cross to our contributing editor, Vuyo Mvoko, who's in the capital of Lesotho, Maseru. Very good morning to you, Vuyo. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Evan.
Vuyo, just give us an update on the latest. Where are we with counting? It seems this process is going to take a little bit of time.
It does look like it's going to take a wee bit of time. I mean, it has taken them something like, 36 hours to go past the halfway mark. So it looks like we're in it for a bit of a long haul. The National Results Center, which is the door right behind me, is going to open at about 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock on the dot, we're waiting for them to arrive and to open so that they can then begin to give us feedback as to how many, what have we got so far, who has won what, and so on. But right now, not too far away, a few minutes from where I am, the observer missions are beginning the first of hourly briefings that are going to take place over the next 4 hours, where each one of them will be taking journalists and civil society through what they observed, how this election went, and what they make of it. But I don't think we're expecting any surprises there. As Minister Ngwane Maita Mashabane said there earlier when we spoke to her yesterday, everyone seems to think everything went smoothly. There are no big issues really. Eben?
For you, Tom Thabane looks to be in the early lead. This is after 35 out of 80 constituencies. Is that trend set to continue? And also, what's been the reaction of the opposition parties until now to the results that have been coming in?
Well, when we put that to the parties, including his, much as they're excited, it's a much stronger showing than they had thought. But the bottom line, they say, is that the mix of both the winning constituencies, but also the proportional representation part, which then, in terms of a rather complicated formula for South Africans, that is going to give us the final result. And things, as much as I say, the ABC has improved, the sort of constituency, the proportional representation component is a bit complicated and may change the picture. But also with the rest of the constituencies that are yet to report. In fact, overnight, your DCs have picked up. So which then means that the picture is definitely going to change. And from what everybody, without exception, is telling us, it does look like Lesotho is yet again going for a hung parliament, which would mean that there's going to be a coalition government with all its weaknesses. Yeben?
What does that then say about stability and prosperity for the country after this election?
It doesn't really bode well, given the experience of the coalition whose term has had to end abruptly. Because coalition governments, by their very nature, tend to be weak, because compromises are made in terms of who goes to the executive. The respective partners tend to appoint their own people and cronies and that sort of thing. And generally speaking, you have to govern by consensus, which then weakens the ability of even the strongest government, the strongest willed government you may come across. So it is not an ideal situation. But the parties, I think, accept that the Basotho have spoken, so they would have to work within what they are given. And what many people are pointing out is that Basotho, or the parties and their leaders, have learnt their lessons from the experience of the past 2 years, and they will get into whatever coalition arrangement a lot wiser than they were 2 years ago, which would then mean, but do remember also, they undertook studies, they went outside of the continent, they went overseas, they went to Australasia, they also went to Europe to study coalition arrangements there and the best practices there, and they hope that those will come quite invaluable when they form coalitions. So as much as coalitions are not ideal, they say the fact they are forced by the electorate to govern through coalitions as things stand, and if that happens, they reckon they'll be a lot wiser, and those coalitions will work a lot better than the coalition they just had.
Vuyo, I thank you for that contribution. That's our contributing editor coming to you live from the capital of Lesotho, Maseru. He'll be there for much of the rest of the week, giving us updates as to how the election results develop and what people are saying. Time now for us to look back at, for me, the big story of the week now. The families of Moses Katane and JB Marks have finally received their remains. An official homecoming ceremony was held at the Waterkloof Air Force Base in Pretoria. President Jacob Zuma said he hopes this will be the start of more homecomings for many others who died outside South Africa during the apartheid years.
They are finally back home, touching down on a free and democratic South Africa, a goal they strived for. It was a solemn event, but their lives and legacies were celebrated. Among those attending, cabinet ministers, tripartite alliance leaders, and ordinary members of the public. The president took the lead in reminding everyone about why this day is so significant. He broke into song, singing about the day they finally returned. In his address, he expressed the hope that this will be the start of more homecomings.
I hope these leaders have now opened the way for us to think differently and to be innovative, to ensure that even if that process takes longer, but we'll begin a process to bring back our heroes and heroines.
The president thanked Russia for supporting the struggle and the friendship it continues to show.
The remarkable and stately send-off when they left Russia will also forever be remembered by the South African people as a gesture of true friendship.
The Russians will keep the bus of the repatriated heroes on the exhumed graves as a sign of remembrance. The Kotane family welcomed their father's remains with mixed emotions.
Today has brought on a lot of memories. It's brought on a lot of motivation for us as the next generation. Being in the midst of these legends, these icons as they have been made out, is overwhelming overall. How do we fill such footsteps?
JP Mark's family says the last few months have been emotionally taxing. Marx was buried in Russia in August 1972 after suffering a stroke.
The family are very happy, but at the same time they're very emotional. You know, after all these years, Uncle JB returned to his home soil. Now they have closure to go have a place to go mourn.
As the mortal remains of the two giants of the struggle return home, they will be given proper recognition by the people they so diligently served. President Zuma has announced special official funerals for them. Mzwan Lembech, SABC News, Air Force Base Waterkloof, Pretoria.
Let's just take a quick look at some of your tweets at SABC Newsroom, is where we live on Twitter. This is some of your views on the return of the mortal remains of some of our most significant heroes. SACP Linda Jabani says, President Zuma, Kotane Marx, they come back to a free South Africa. That is correct. Sabela Khadebe says, Nelson Mandela is proud of Kotane and Marx, says Jacob Zuma. Kulumko, home at last. That is a sentiment shared by many across the nation today. Let's now take a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world. Here are some of the front pages from elsewhere. We start with The National. And just when you thought it's only South Africa debating over energy, the prospect of new nuclear power plants in Scotland is reared over the weekend as politicians clashed over the best way to keep Scotland's lights on. Meanwhile, in the Nigerian papers this morning, there are reports that the fuel crisis across the country worsened over the weekend as most of the petrol stations were shut down, leaving motorists completely stranded. Then, in the United States, the Dallas Morning News has an exclusive piece on the 26-year-old nurse who contracted Ebola last year from a patient she cared for in a Texas hospital. She plans on pressing charges against the hospital as she is still suffering from nightmares, body aches, and insomnia, she claims. Now, today's picture of the day is on the fire that broke out in Muizenberg in the Western Cape yesterday. The tweet comes from @HoutBayNews with a view of the Hout Bay Harbour. Can we have a look at it? There, there we have it. Charles Mercer, view from Hout Bay Harbour. A picture, as you can see, the mountain on fire with the beautiful boats there in the foreground. Let's take a look now at what is happening across the country today. In Pretoria, the capital, the Minister in the Presidency responsible for women, Susan Chabangu, will brief the media on South Africa's participation at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. Here in Johannesburg, Brand South Africa and the Trade and Industry Minister, Rob Davies, will discuss the transformation of the South African economy since 1994. In the High Court in Johannesburg, the trial of a man accused of shooting 3-year-old Luke Tibbets is expected to start. Then tonight in Cape Town, the University of Cape Town will pay tribute to renowned South African novelist and playwright Andre P. Brink, who passed away last month. Time for us to take a short commercial break. You are watching Newsroom on SABC News.
Hello, it's a favorite minister here. Yane, party is a very nice language because it was written by you, the people. Here's a good one. Try hard, an individual who tries against all odds. Hoy! Give me water!
Help make party South Africa's 12th official language. Sign the petition today.
This one is good, hey?
Welcome back. Last year, South Africa saw one rhino poached every 8 hours of every single day. With 1,215 rhinos illegally killed, another grim rhino poaching record was set for the 8th consecutive year. Now, with the Department of Environmental Affairs, who has translocated more than 100 rhinos to neighbouring states through private partnerships and government initiatives, we now talk to the Honourable Minister of Environmental Affairs, Edna Malewa, about what more will be done this year to halt this escalating crisis. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eman. Thank you. Good morning to your listeners too and your viewers.
First, I want to start. The statistic says that we've been on a downward slide since 2007. Numbers really escalating, more than 1,200 last year. Are you happy that we've maybe made a better start this year in the fight?
No, I will never be happy even with one. Even with one being killed, I'll never be happy. It is indeed a serious challenge that we are faced with, especially because we know that we are fighting a very serious criminal syndicate of the world. The syndicate that actually operates even in drug trafficking, human trafficking, and that kind of world. And indeed, it is necessary for us to work together. We have recently agreed at cabinet level, after that agreement, released an integrated approach of fighting this scourge of rhino poaching. And that's the reason why I actually emphasize integrated, is because it is necessary for us to integrate our work and to act collectively.
Yeah.
Because with government alone, we don't really think that it will really be helpful, and we won't make it alone. So it's necessary to implement the strategy that we've put in place. What does the strategy consist of? And I'm saying strategy because we've just started implementing that strategy last year. And of course, we are looking forward to many ideas that may come on board. We've recently also just met at the CITES level, the receiving country, user countries, and transit countries that are formulating a different strategy over and above what we are implementing in South Africa as well.
You mentioned CITES right now, and I want to get straight in there because one of the principles or one of the agreements that came out of there was that Mozambique had to step up their side of the bargain, especially on the Kruger Park. By the 31st of January, I think they needed to have released a report. Have they done so, and are you happy with the contribution that they are making in this fight?
Well, Mozambique is actually a transit country. Indeed, they were mentioned, and they had certain things that were bound to do as per the decision of CITES conference that's set in Thailand. They did finally, after some bit of struggle, submit that report, which really says that they need to do their bit, they need to have their laws in place, they need to really up their game in terms of fighting this scourge of rhino poaching. They have done so. However, we also had a memorandum of understanding drafted and agreed to with Mozambique, where we are working together. And that memorandum of understanding speaks to issues like, for instance, working together in strengthening our capacity to police and to really secure these animals of ours. Remember, Mozambique has got a problem in elephant poaching.
Yeah.
We also have in rhino poaching. So the memorandum of understanding straddles across law enforcement to real issues of communities, empowerment of communities, sustainable livelihoods for those communities. But it arises from the fact that we have lowered the fences between us and Mozambique. They had to remove communities that were found that found themselves in the park when the fences were lowered. They've since begun doing so. They are doing their last bit now to remove those, and we're really working together in that direction. It's still not enough. We think that we can still do better.
One of the buzzwords within the anti-poaching drive right now is demand reduction strategies, and that's working in places like Vietnam where the demand is still very high. How do you see those processes work? It's worked in the past, in the 70s and 80s, in places like Japan and Korea. Are you happy with the efforts on that front?
Until such time that we really have zero rhino being poached, only then we will say we are happy. At the moment, we say yes, we are having a step in the right direction. Because indeed, after our memorandum of understanding, which we also, similar one with Mozambique that we have entered into with Vietnam. Vietnamese have actually been into South Africa, two groups of theirs, the artists and the young generation, to come and walk around South Africa and seeing the poaching levels and how poaching happened. They are now in their country working on carnival programs of educating their own society in terms of ensuring that there is a reduction. So the demand reduction with regards to Vietnam is being driven from that end. But not only those groups, government itself is beginning to speak out. They're strengthening their laws, and I'm saying it's a step in the right direction. Vietnam was also part of our teams, which met at CITES, just a small group, about how we're going to work with Interpol, with IQUIC, on issues of policing and demand reduction.
Bringing it back to South Africa, ma'am, the arrest rates in South Africa, are you happy with the way that we are following through once we've made arrests?
I think there has been a great improvement indeed, I must say. If I compare the current rate of prosecution, convictions in particular, because you can prosecute and not really quite successfully convict. So the rate of convictions has actually grown. As per last year, around the third quarter of the year, of this financial year, in fact, we were sitting at 61% of convictions, and which was really still a figure that had to be completed at the end of the year and taking stock. And I think that we are doing better. The fact that there are such high conviction rates and also sentences that are being passed, harsh ones, 40 years for that Thai national, and now recently the rate of the many number of years that have been given to it's really quite helpful. But not only that, even in the arrests, the fact that working with South African authorities in the Czech Republic, there could be that number of people, there's 16 or 18 arrested now recently, a very huge syndicate, and 10 of those as well here in South Africa that have been operating in this. Amongst them, by the way, police from the Hawks, lawyers, and women. I mean, it's really quite shocking, but at least this is a breakthrough. We do think that we are going somewhere. Whether that will be a deterrent, I'm not sure still, because we still need to work harder, I think, in ensuring that this serves as a deterrent. But as I say, these measures will not work one in isolation from the other. It's puzzles of a jigsaw, and we need to just get them to work together at all times.
Well, ma'am, what we can say, the good news is, last year there were 3 times more rhino poached at the same time that we have at this time of the year. So whatever policies you are putting in place, it seems to be bearing fruit. I thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much indeed.
That's the Honourable Minister of Environmental Affairs here in South Africa, Edna Molewa, talking about the scourge of rhino poaching and poaching in general. That is a problem for all of us here on the African continent. Let's have a look now at the tweet of the day. This one comes from Gwendolyn Wellman. She says, if we do not reduce the extreme poverty around the Kruger National Park and in Mozambique, the war against rhino poaching will be lost. That is one of the strategies that our Honourable Minister is putting into place, and that is to try and get some other economic activity going within these communities. Very well said, Gwendolyn, but that is something that we are right on top of now. Let's look at some of the wider tweets. What else are we talking about this morning? What else are you passionate about? Of course, don't forget, at SABC Newsroom is where we live. The fires in the Western Cape have been causing havoc. Here are some of the pictures on Twitter. Sue Little says, praying that the rumors of Tinchola Atlantic burning to the ground aren't true. Devastating fires doing the rounds. There we have another picture. Fire at 6 a.m. this morning. Now that is in the Muizenberg area. Wind stopped, otherwise I think Scott Estate would be gone with last night's gale, says. There you have another picture of the mountain they've sent in from Catherine Person. Very much. Muizenberg fire still burning. Take care up there, she says. Yes, we urge all of you in the area. Look at that. That was last night's picture of the Muizenberg fire. That one was at the toll gate on Chapman's Peak as fire trucks were trying to get in there to try and make a contribution in saving the mountain or some of the homes that are even being threatened there. Thank you for those lovely pictures, by the way. The recent widespread violence, service delivery protests here in South Africa in many instances have sounded an alarm that cannot be ignored. A study conducted between 2005 and 2013 looked at causes of service delivery protests in South African municipalities. The study is premised on the fact that no political democracy can survive or flourish if the masses of its own people remain in poverty and a state of inequality and unemployed without tangible prospects for a better life. In this regard, the presence of service delivery protests, especially violent ones, is a threat to South Africa's democracy and its sustainability. The South African Human Rights Commission also looked in the process to the increase of these protests. In the studio, we have Commissioner from the Human Rights Commission, Advocate Mohammed Shafi Amirmia. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Evan. Good morning to you and to your listeners. Yes.
Please give us a brief on the work that you guys have done with regards to service delivery protests. Where are we and where are we heading?
Okay. Just to start off, Evan, it is a concern for the Human Rights Commission in the sense that we looked at service delivery in a holistic way. We then looked at our own complaints mechanisms, and in the complaints mechanisms, which gives us the power to resolve complaints, but also we are entitled to conduct investigative hearings. And this is precisely what we've done. We've conducted these investigative hearings last week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And what we did was we called government, human settlements, COGTA, the provincial governments of KZN, Western Cape, and Gauteng, the city of Johannesburg, the city of Cape Town, and the city of Durban, eThekwini municipality. And we want to ask them, but what are the issues that's giving a rise to these kind of concerns? Yeah. We had in 2014 a water and sanitation report which identified 6 challenges. Those 6 challenges basically are still the same challenges that are confronting the whole issue of service delivery protests right now. If I may, there are systematic failures in governance and budgeting, particularly implementation and spending on projects, a lack of cooperative governance between departments jointly responsible for municipal services, a lack of capacity and skill, and a high vacancy rate and turnover in the quality of services in municipalities, a lack of transparency in hiring external contractors, in holding contractors accountable, and the quality of services rendered, a lack of understanding and implementation of a human rights approach to service delivery in respect of transparency and public participation, and a lack of monitoring and evaluation of projects implemented by local government, as well as a local government of monitoring and evaluation of the utilization of funds allocated to local government. Having done that, we then said, okay, these issues are human rights issues that not only pertain to water and sanitation, but it also cuts across the right to access to housing as well. When we did that and we turned our focus to the access to housing and the housing hearings, these things were squarely within our mandates as well. The question of urbanization, town planning, upgrading of informal settlements, the issue of the red ends and evictions. Now, these are bread butter issues that needs to be addressed as a matter of absolute urgency.
On the ground, though, why do these protests often turn violent? Is there a criminal element within this legitimate concerns that's driving the violence that we see?
You know, it's both. There's a genuine concern in communities around the government not talking to them. And within that, obviously, you're going to get the criminal element. I think we need to separate the two issues. The issue here is, as far as the criminal element is concerned, I think we can resolve the issue quickly by saying that political parties need to dissociate themselves from the criminality of the issues. If that is so, it'll give South African police services space to do their work and get to the criminals.
When does a protest infringe? We're talking about the rights of people. When does a protest infringe on the rights of others? We've seen protests where schooling gets interrupted, schools can't continue working. Yes, there's a right to protest, but surely there must also be a right for these protests not to infringe on the rights of others.
Absolutely. I think you raised a very fundamental question. The question then arises is why do communities resort to those kind of things? Because, you know, it doesn't help that you burn down the country through cinders and then restart the process, because at the end of the day, it's taxpayers that are left to put up those infrastructure which we basically need all the time: schools, clinics, hospitals, police stations, and all those kind of primary healthcare buildings and so forth. Now, it's counterproductive if you're going to burn it today and tomorrow you have to rebuild it. It takes money to do that. So we need to separate the issues. We need to engage communities. And I think the Human Rights Commission, by having done these hearings, it was phenomenal, because communities came to us and said, listen, you know, we are just tired. We are being shunted from pillar to post in government, from this government office to that government office, and nothing is being done about it. Can you help us? And they came and they said, you know, per se, we are not violent by nature. These, you know, if you look at the officials in government, these are our children. Now we go to them and you say, but why are you holding us to ransom, you know, when there is monies for service delivery? I mean, we have a pro-poor constitution. We have a constitution that upholds the Bill of Rights. It talks about citizen participation. It entrenches public participation. And these are the issues that, unfortunately, the officials in government are not living up to. Hence, the frustrations are building up to such a point where, you know, it's becoming uncontrollable. And therefore, we, as a Human Rights Commission, decided it is pertinent for us to raise these issues squarely and come up with a solution, because these are cross-cutting issues. Socio-economic rights cannot wait for 5 years. It is today. People need the answers today. There's budgets for it, and people must live up to their accountabilities. And if they can't, they must resign and let other people get into those jobs where they will deliver accordingly.
I thank you for joining. It's a very emotive issue here in South Africa, and we will look at this process intensely and hope that we can all come together and find the solutions going forward. Thank you very much. That's Human Rights Commission Commissioner, Advocate Mohammed Shafi Armirmia. Thank you very much for joining us
Thank you very much, Evan, and look forward to the next meeting.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, time for us now to have a look at our Facebook page. That's where you can, well, send us a message if you like, but you also get all the latest. You can read all about the repatriation of the remains of Moses Katani and J.B. Marks there. Now, in the courts today, the trial of a man accused of shooting 3-year-old Luke Tibbetts is expected to start in the High Court here in Johannesburg today. Then, police are still investigating the cause of an accident in Babsfontein here in Gauteng that left 2 people dead and at least 24 others injured. And, of course, in Muizenberg, in the Cape Peninsula, a fire is raging through the Muizenberg Mountains there. According to the City of Cape Town's Fire and Rescue Services, strong winds are hampering firefighters' attempts to douse the flames on the slopes. You can find all of those and a whole lot more on Newsroom's Facebook page. You can also visit us, sabc.co.za/news, for all the latest updates all of the time. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back after a short little break.
prominent names have been mentioned at the Arms Deal Commission, among them Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Tony Blair and Tony Georgiades.
Terry Crawford Brown has been making the loudest noise, from taking the president to the highest court in the land to grilling witnesses in the first phase of the hearings.
Commissioners have adopted a tough stance with witnesses, compelling them to back up claims and produce evidence.
Do you know those MPs? I know some of them, but really, sir, I would not think it appropriate to disclose their names publicly.
Your World, weekdays at 9 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. Lesotho's Prime Minister Tom Tabane has retained a lead in general elections, winning 35 out of 80 constituencies where vote counting has been completed. The election is aimed at restoring stability following an alleged coup attempt last August. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has congratulated the people of Lesotho for their peaceful conduct during the parliamentary elections. Moon has commended the country's Independent Electoral Commission for preparing the elections, as well as SADC, who led efforts to peacefully resolve political challenges. Firefighters in Muizenberg in the Cape Peninsula have worked throughout the night as emergency services battle to contain fires in the area. This after first reports of the fire raging on Muizenberg's mountain came through yesterday. It's been reported that the fires are now nearing Hout Bay and Noordhoek. The retirement village in Muizenberg is reported to have been evacuated, and fire and rescue services have warned more evacuations are imminent. Kulubu says Zuma's urgent application to have claims of about 1.5 billion rand against Aurora Empowerment Systems set aside will be heard in the High Court in Pretoria today. Zuma's court bid could hinder liquidators' efforts to hold the directors of Aurora responsible for the stripping of assets at mines in Springs and Orkney. In 2009, Aurora was appointed by liquidators to manage the mines in Springs and Orkney. The company instead allegedly stripped the mines of infrastructure and left hundreds of employees without pay. Remember, you can find all of those stories on Facebook if you search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Given, back to you.
Thank you very much, Janine. This weekend, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture hosted the 6th Annual Northern Cape Writers' Festival. It celebrated under the themes "The Doors of Learning Shall Be Open," highlighting the progress and milestones achieved since the launch of the Freedom Charter during the Congress of the People in 1955. Scholars and writers were offered the opportunity to interact and learn from notable and established authors. Now, here to tell us more is the MEC for the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture in that area, Lebogang Motlaping. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you and your viewers, Evan.
Just give us a little bit of background on the Writers' Festival. It started in 2007 and it's gaining momentum now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Thank you for the opportunity. Evan, like you rightfully say, this is the 6th annual Writers' Festival of the Northern Cape Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, which basically seeks to afford aspiring learners an opportunity to actually prove that they have a talent in terms of writing, and also to ensure that we inculcate the culture of reading and writing among the young people. Our festival is not very commercial. It's a developmental festival where young people are given an opportunity to tell their stories, to put them down on paper, and also to stories and poems that we are going to consolidate and possibly put them in one book that will be circulated in all our libraries in the province. So I think we did have about 150 learners from different parts of the district, the 5 districts of the province, who participated in the creative writing workshops. I'm really pleased to say that having visited all those workshops, participated in those workshops, I was very impressed with the kind of work and talent and commitment that I saw among all the groupings that participated in these workshops. But also to say, safe to say that we also had a kids festival which ran concurrently with the main festival, where children from ECDs were also invited, and then they were also given an opportunity to tell stories and to listen to stories, and books were read, short stories were read to them, and it was very interesting.
Now, I understand there was a very lively debate over the weekend, one that could be escalated into wider society about the relationship between government and the media, especially as we enter a third decade of freedom here in South Africa. What would you say was the most notable things that emerged from this lively debate you guys had?
I think what emerged from the debate is just a matter of ensuring that we forge proper links with all the media houses, because we can't be hard with ourselves as a country, as partners in conversing to the world what we stand for as South Africa. We need to appreciate the fact that we will be open to criticism, but we at the same time we're saying the kind of criticism that we get from whoever should be constructive, because if you don't get that kind of criticism, you won't grow as both as a department or as government. So I think what really emerged was just a matter of saying that let's work together and ensure that we converse and we communicate all our achievements to our communities out there. So I think, despite the fact that from time to time we'll have issues with the media, we appreciate the kind of contribution that they make in our lives. When I came in here, I saw on organizational principles of the SABC, where they are saying conversation and partnerships. So I think what we're doing now, what we are trying to do was to actually say, how do we strengthen those partnerships in communicating our achievements with communities out there.
So I thank you for joining us today. It's a wonderful initiative, and let's hope that we'll be able to take it from your part of the world and take it into the rest of the country. It's a fantastic initiative. That is the MEC for Sports, Arts and Culture in the Northern Cape, Mr. Lebogang Motlapeng, talking about the Northern Cape Writers Festival that is now in its 7th year and going from strength to strength. Now, let's take a look at your tweets. What are your tweets about? Your tweets about the Proteas, and we were going to talk about the Proteas here, but unfortunately my producer and director feels we should put this up first. Come on, Cricket South Africa, this World Cup belongs to you. All the best, they say. Big match tomorrow. Can't wait to see the Proteas batting. Cricket World Cup 15. Good luck, boys, for tomorrow's game. Yes, they're playing against tomorrow. Imran Baloch says that. And then Queen Rasmus says, wishing all the boys good luck for the next match, because I'm Dale Steyn's biggest fan and I'm a proud South African supporter. Okay, you can come back to me now. Not soccer, he says. Now, let's talk cricket. Hero to villain and back to hero, sometimes back to villain again. That's the constant roller coaster that South Africa's national cricket team is on. A demanding cricket public often villainizes the Proteas with the all too often used chokers tag, if you ask me. After a defeat against India last week, that was again the case. But then all was forgiven after a win against the West Indies in a crucial World Cup match. How does this affect performance, if at all? Well, here to tell us is sports psychologist Julian De La Hunt, who's a senior partner at Eye to Eye Africa. Good morning, Julian. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Eben, and morning to everyone.
This constant badgering by supporters that we have in South Africa, does this have an effect on a team, especially a national team in our case?
Well, yeah, I think firstly we would have had a very different conversation had the South Africa-West Indies game turned out differently. So absolutely, Eben. It would be based on past performances, past experiences. So all of these emotions will be coming back, all the thoughts on the chokers tag, where we're going with this World Cup will all be coming back to the team. Not individual tweets and individual social media items, but really a history of what's happened in the past will be filtering back to the players. And this is a time where we need strong leadership. You know, someone like an AB de Villiers needs to stand up in a time like this and really pull the team together, pushing aside, you know, a lot of the negativities and feeding off the positive energy.
Pressure situations, though, are different totally. Yes, the New Zealand game was a pressure situation. This constant conversation, does it have an effect on you in pressure situations, how you react, or is that overstated?
Look, I mean, these are professional sportsmen. They spend a lot of time working around the area of stress management, pressure management, and the like. So you don't typically see this playing that much of effect unless the performance starts shifting, and there are individuals in the team who will be feeling it a little more than others.
That's the next question. Individuals then, how do they respond? How does it fit within the team dynamic? We look at a guy like Wayne Parnell, who's often singled out or targeted on social media and often mainstream. How does that sit within the individual then?
Yeah, well, in that instance, you know, strong man management needs to be in place. Wayne Parnell needs to be pulled aside, and a lot of time spent with that individual, because it will be sitting and it will be a lot more closer to heart to a Wayne Parnell. He walks out onto the field with the expectation of failure and the expectation of he's fighting for his place in the team, which is not ideal going into a Cricket World Cup. Each of the 15-man squad need to know exactly what their role is, and they may only get one game, but they need to be very comfortable with what they need to do in that game.
Yeah, and what's expected of them. I want you to tell me, Wyatt, and maybe you might not be the right person to tell me, Julian, but why does the South African public always need a villain in the piece in order to deal with setbacks? Are we unique in that?
No, I don't think we're unique. Firstly, I think we are very loyal, and this comes from our history. We're loyal in terms of provincialism.
Yeah.
So picking a South African cricket team, if you sat around a braai on a Sunday, you're not going to get the same 11 from any South African supporter. So there's a lot of loyalty and loyalism around that fact. We have 7 out of 11 of our cricketers would walk into any international team.
Yeah.
We've got the leading bowler, the leading 2 or 3 batsmen in world cricket. So we're always looking for why would we lose? It couldn't possibly be anybody else's fault.
Yeah.
It needs to be one individual, perhaps, or 2 individuals who need to stand out. And unfortunately, they're players like the Parnells and even Quinton de Kock, who hopefully is going to end up being a dark horse for us in this tournament. If he comes off in a semi-final or final, people will forget about a really poor World Cup to date.
Absolutely, that's right. Now, tomorrow we're playing Ireland. A very underrated side. If we look at the log, they're right behind us on the log. They're unbeaten. They've won 2 out of 2. They're a very good side with a lot of experienced players in that side.
Yeah, and the South African management and coaching staff will know them very well. They are members of the management team who've spent considerable time, including coaching the Ireland team. The difficulty is always picking yourself up for what is supposedly a minnow team, raising the bar and raising yourself to the levels of a West Indies game again. So in this instance, absolutely, Ireland, they're a good team. They're a good, solid squad. They've been together for a long time. It's how we play on the day, and the World Cup is a progressive tournament.
Bigger picture, quickly. Do you see the kind of mental fragility that we often associated? Is it busy dissipating out of this team, and are we on the front foot now at this World Cup?
Yeah, I like what I'm seeing at the moment. Having bounced back from that India game to the West Indies game, that is a real positive sign. I think what the South African public need to realise is the World Cup is not a sprint. It's a tournament. It's a journey of very well-timed moments of excellence. Yeah. And those need to come to the fore at the given moment. And we could see something in the making here, which I'm really rooting for.
I hope that Julian is correct, because if we don't win this World Cup, I don't think we ever will. This is the best side we'll ever have. Anyhow, today is a rest day at the Cricket World Cup, but let's just run through the quick final standings in Groups A and B so that you can see where we're at. Of course, New Zealand, they look like a shoo-in there. In Group A. A little bit surprised about Australia. They suddenly find themselves under a little bit of pressure. I still think they will walk through that group. But it's interesting that the pre-tournament favourite is not really, or the self-installed pre-tournament favourite, not really having it all their own way. Let's quickly have a look at Group B. You saw there that South Africa is in second place now, and if they beat Ireland tomorrow, they put a bit of daylight between them and the rest, and one can then see South Africa really marching into semi-finals contention in that tournament. That is where we leave you today with the good news. Of course, early doors tomorrow morning, South Africa against Ireland. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a total rebroadcast at 5 a.m. the following day. We also stream live on YouTube at that time with the whole show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom, and Julian and myself, we love it in the morning.
There are places some are afraid to go. Discussion